Good morning. Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo on MCTV and U96.5 FM radio, Hot Like Pepper radio, and Multicultural radio and TV. Our first guest is Minister of National Security, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hinds, and we will bring him on now, and we will start a conversation with him. Good morning, Minister Hinds.
How are you? To you. I'm fine, thank you very warmly. It's a pleasure being in your company. Good morning.
Yes, and thank you for agreeing to be on the program. When I contacted you and you agreed to be on this program, I don't think the situation was as controversial as it is now, but we're in the heart of the controversy. And I think that in the interest of viewers, we need to explain to them what is happening from your point of view, Minister. And I want to give you the opportunity to put into context the issue that is raging now before the country about the appointment of a commissioner of police. So I give you a free hand there in terms of your perspective.
Thank you very much. This is my first time on your program, so I appreciate that and say a very good morning to all of your listeners and your viewers. The fact of the matter is Trinidad and Tobago is a very beautifully noisy place. And there's a lot of noise at all times, which I must say in a most un-Trinidadian way, I personally do not particularly enjoy. The situation is that the Office of Commissioner of Police is now vacant. It was some time ago, and the Police Service Commission, the constitutional authority under Section 123 of the Constitution, allows the police service the opportunity to, on our behalf, appoint a commissioner of police and a deputy commissioner of police. It also allows them to discipline, to monitor, and to disappoint, if I may use that loose term, meaning to end the service of the ranks of deputy commissioner and commissioner of police. As you would know, prior to 2007, such an office holder or office holders would have been appointed by the Police Service Commission, but there was a veto in favor of the Prime Minister, whoever he or she may have been. And so, in 2007, in some negotiations with the government, the UNC insisted that that veto power be removed and a new system of appointment vested only in the Police Service Commission was designed. Very recently, we came to the end of the contract period that had appointed Gary Griffith 3 years or so ago, and the Police Service Commission was faced with the issue of appointing another. Given the time frame, given the circumstances, the order gave them the legal basis for this action. Actually, legal notice number 183 of 2021 simplified the process a bit by removing the need for a firm to do the assessment and then to provide the Service Commission itself as a body with its product, its outcome. The Service Commission then organized a merit list which would have been sent to Her Excellency, and Her Excellency would send that to the Parliament for our consideration. So at the end of the day, the Parliament had the final consideration. The trouble on this occasion is that the process was not complete by the time the then Commissioner of Police's term expired, and they had to fix it with an acting commissioner. And they went ahead and they, in their own judgment and considerations, appointed Mr. Gary Griffith to act as commissioner pending the outcome of the process. I must tell you truthfully that the process not being complete, the National Security Council got information which it considered that it could not ignore and that it felt obliged to share with the Police Service Commission, which is the body that was responsible for appointing the Commissioner of Police, whoever he or she would eventually be. And having so done, the Service Commission continued its work. It appointed, on the basis of the information that was now in its domain, and perhaps more we wouldn't know, appointed Mr. Stanley John to investigate some of those matters. And on that basis, very recently, told in writing the, I would say, not acting Commissioner of Police, but told Mr. Gary Griffith that he should remain away from his desk until the outcome of this inquiry. And the reason why I would not say acting commissioner is because, as you know, his contract expired on the 17th of September. And a few days later, he applied to me as Minister of National Security for no pay leave to travel abroad for 10 working days. I approved that leave, and as a consequence of his absence from the job, the Service Commission, in its own deliberations, exercising its constitutional authority, appointed Mr. MacDonald Jacob to act as commissioner, and he is still in the chair today, and you can only have one acting commissioner. Hence the reason why I phrased it in the way in which I just did. So Mr. is in the position of acting commissioner, and Mr. Griffith indicated earlier that he was scheduled to return to office, having come to Trinidad, returned to Trinidad 1 week before the 2 weeks that he had scheduled. 10 days, including the weekends, would have made it roughly 2 weeks. And he approached me on the matter. I sought advice, contemplated the issues, and suggested to him that he remain, in my words, at bay until the time for the leave that was approved with permission to travel expired. Somewhere inside of there was a misunderstanding of what I made very, very clear, and I heard it said that I had suggested that he remain on leave until further notice, which was not the truth, and I explained that in great and clear terms last Friday in the Senate when Senator Mark raised that issue. So that matter is now stale and behind us. In the meantime, the Service Commission, acting in its authority, suggested to Mr. Griffith in writing that he remain off the job until the end of the investigation that the Service Commission, had engendered through the person, the office of Mr. Stanley John, a retired Court of Appeal judge. Of course, from the time Mr. Griffith was made to act as commissioner upon the expiration of his contract on the 17th of September, there were those who felt that that was improper. For one reason or another, lawyers wrote articles about it, and there's a lot of commentary, and as we speak, a public-spirited, well-known citizen has, through his attorney, approached the court to say that that appointment was wrong in the first place, ab initio, for Mr. Griffith as acting commissioner.
Okay,
On the other hand, there are those who are arguing for Mr. Griffith as we speak, that he is acting commissioner and can expect to be that up until the process is expired, the process is completed for the selection of a substantive commissioner, and any action to tell him to stay away from the job in the intervening period on an administrative leave, sort of, is improper, and that matter was threatened, legal action was threatened in that matter if the Service Commission did not retrieve that letter, retract that letter by midday of yesterday. Well, as far as I'm aware, no such action has taken place as yet. So all of these legal gymnastics and niceties have now come into the very noisy theater that is Trinidad and Tobago. But from my perspective, as Minister of National Security, on behalf of the government, we could live without the noise. We are not with a substantive commissioner, but we have an acting commissioner of police. And we have had that many times before in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, the office holder, Mr. MacDonald Jacob, experienced and so appointed, is expected to carry out the work of the police service as its leader now, and to conduct that work unperturbed in the protection and the service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. From my perspective as Member of Parliament, representing Laventille West, and it being branded by many in our society as some hot spot, and which admittedly there is an inordinately high amount of violence, particularly armed violence, over the last week or two. The borderlines issue have seemed to have gone up again, gone down. Oh no, I'm sorry. The borderlines, which were down for a substantial period, they seem to have been erected again. And I have been observing an inordinate amount of shooting and killing in my constituency as Minister of National Security. Now that, for me, is my concern. I saw a mother and her daughter somewhere in this country found murdered in their home within the last 48 or 72 hours. I saw a coconut vendor setting up his business in Golconda. He was shot and killed. I saw the videos of a young man who I know in my constituency sitting along with other co-workers of the CPEP team in the Gonzales area that I represent, suddenly set upon by 2 or 3 armed persons emerging from a car, and perished that man's life just like that. Now, those are my concerns. So with all the noise and with all the bacchanal and the toing and the froing and the legal niceties, I am not too concerned about that. Of course I am concerned, but my greater concern, Mr. Tiwari, is for the safety and the protection of the people on the ground. And I would like to see all the elements of national security completely at work, totally, optimally at work in the service of the people. I can tell you.
All right, let's stop there for a minute.
In the context of COVID-19, let me just say this before I allow you.
Yeah, okay.
In the context of COVID-19, many of the elements of the staff of the government are on rotation, 50% at home, and sensibly so.
Yes.
But national security is an essential service, and as such, all personnel are expected to be on the job and to give all that they must, sworn and paid to do, in the protection of the people. And for me, Mr. Tiwari, that is my focus.
All right. You have given a full picture from your point of view of the issues. Let me ask you a couple of things. The contract of Mr. Griffith has come to an end. It came to an end on August the 17th. Did he receive an acting appointment? And it seems to me that you are suggesting that perhaps the Police Service Commission made a mistake in appointing him to act. Is that your position, or am I misinterpreting you?
You are misinterpreting me. If you
Okay.
were a different man, I might have said deliberately, but given
No,
your
no, I'm
history
not. I
and the
just
manner
want to
beneath
clarify.
me,
I want to clarify.
no, I'm not suggesting that at all. All I did for you is to lay bare the facts and hopefully in the chronology that your viewers could easily understand. I have expressed no opinion. Of
Okay.
course, you must know I would be loath to do that, given the fact, not simply because these matters are sub judice, because I don't think this conversation is intended to or will have the impact of influencing any judge who may find him or herself in arbitration, so to speak, or in judgment on this matter. As an arbiter in this matter, that is what sub judice says. Any comments that are intended to influence the outcome of a judicial position. So this could never be so categorized, but not purely because of the context of sub judice, but also because I just think it would be quite improper for me as a stakeholder inside of this to give my own view or comment upon it. All I did is to lay out the facts
Yeah,
for
what
you
the
in the
facts
most
are.
simple possible manner, so that your
But
viewers can follow them.
but we have an acting commissioner of police, Mr. McDonald Jacob, and as you yourself said, you can't have two commissioners. So I made that interpretation, asking you the question simply from the point of view of trying to clarify for the public, and really to establish what is the legal status of Mr. Griffith now, if you have an acting commissioner and his contract has come to an end. And that is why I asked you the question.
Well, you can.
I don't want to do anything to either raise issues that will affect the court. As you say, I don't think this is sub judice in that sense. We're having a conversation. And more than that, I do not want to put you in any position where the relationship between the constitutional position of the Police Service Commission and the role of the political directorate clash. But I just wanted to ask, from your point of view, what is the legal status of Mr. Griffith now?
Well, I think you can view it like this. He was appointed to act as commissioner upon the expiration of his
contract
on the 17th. He made an application to leave the jurisdiction on personal affairs, and that was approved, and he proceeded out of the jurisdiction, away from his desk, so to speak, and out of the jurisdiction. During which time, Mr. Jacob was appointed to act as Commissioner of Police. And of course, as I just told you, as a matter of principle, logic, common sense, even, that you cannot have two acting commissioners of police.
Well, that's why
so Mr. Jacob is now, based on the action of the Police Service Commission, the acting commissioner of police. Mr. Gary Griffith's contract has expired. He was made to act following that. He left the country for some days. Mr. Jacob was acting. You could only have one acting commissioner of police, and therefore, by logic, in answer to your question, there is in office an acting commissioner of police.
And that person
So Mr. Griffith is not the acting commissioner of police.
Okay. All right. That's clear enough for me. And I think the audience, the listeners and viewers will make their own assessment.
And of course, your listeners can view what you have just asked against the context of actual recent history for their answer.
Yes, okay, sure. I want to ask you something. Is there any truth to the allegation that there is political interference in this matter? I will play a clip of Mr. Griffith talking about political interference. I will play your clip from the Parliament Friday, which I thought was very clear. And then I will allow you to say your position, and I will ask a couple of questions.
So this is it in a nutshell. Minister Hinds contacted me yesterday and told me that he would like for me to remain on leave until further notice. Unfortunately, whoever advised the minister gave him wrong advice, because the Minister of National Security does not have the authority to send any police officer on leave based on the law, and for obvious reasons that a politician can direct the police in such a way. This has to be done through the Police Service Commission, and the Police Service Commission, they're fully aware of their role and function, where you cannot send someone on leave unless, of course, there's a disciplinary matter or there's some investigation that is taking place by relevant law enforcement authorities.
Okay, and let's play the response of the Minister of National Security.
Let me address very briefly the question you raised about some article in the Newsday today. And to make it clear that this government is not about any bacchanal and scandal and small talk. We are about providing the people of Trinidad and Tobago with good government, honest government, assuring them that their country is in safe and secure hands with the PNM. That's what we are about. With that behind me, let me say that the Commissioner of Police, Acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith, wrote a letter to me suggesting that he returned to work approximately 1 week or some time before he was due to return from a period of leave. That leave was applied for. He applied to me as Minister of National Security in the normal course of things, and the Police Service Commission was informed. The leave was approved. He returned here approximately 1 week before it was due to expire and inquired of me the following day whether he should return to his desk. I told him I should revert because I needed to understand the implications of that for his approved leave. Before I can return to him, I became aware that he wrote similarly to the Police Service Commission, and the Police Service Commission responded to him, suggesting in the main that that is a matter for the Minister of National Security. And it is on the basis of those two bits of correspondence, which, having called the Commissioner, he acknowledged dispatching to the Service Commission and acknowledged the reply that I was aware that he had received. It was on the basis of that that I told him that he should remain on leave up until the expiration of same on the 20th of September. Mr. Vice President, it so happened, not with any premeditation, that the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security was present with me at the time, and my phone, as usually is the case, was on loudspeaker. So the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of National Security overheard everything in the conversation, and I want to report to Senator Mack and the country today in the spirit of truth and honesty that I told the Commissioner and repeated myself twice, making it pellucidly, abundantly, sufficiently clear for any child to understand. I am speaking about you staying at bay until the expiration of your leave. He acknowledged that and went off of the phone. So to suggest, as Senator Mark did, that this minister told him that he should not return to his desk beyond the 20th is clearly missing the mark, as he always does in his scandalous, and if you would permit me, a colloquialism, bacchanalish tone, which we reject.
All right. Well, you had that exchange there, but then following that, the Police Service Commission basically asked Mr. Griffith not to return to work after the 20th because there were some matters pending that needed to be resolved. Can you comment on the situation? I know you said before that that is now the position on what you did and the conversation and what you said, etc., was clear, and your position there is articulated. But in this situation now, he has been asked to stay away from work, and we have a commissioner, an acting commissioner of police now. Is the Police Service Commission acting on its own, or is there any connection whatsoever with the political directorate in any form? And is there any reason for the population to believe that there is political interference?
Let me say this. In Trinidad and Tobago, following on the British constitutional model and in observation of the concept of the separation of powers, we have three arms of the state, as everyone knows: the parliament or legislature, the judiciary, and of course the executive or the government. And conceptually, these, as Montesquieu and these jurists and thinkers back in their day, 18th century, as they shaped, these institutions of state ought to be separate and apart from each other if you have to have fairness and the protection of the rights of the citizens. And those came about in the days when they were not citizens and citizens' rights, but rather subjects, where kings had tremendous power to issue an allegation against you, determine the sentence, and execute it. Those days are long gone. Notwithstanding that, and our modern democracy established under the Constitution, the question of separation of powers is real and conceptually strong and necessary, I venture to say. But do you know, we have to have some level of collaboration for the state to work. The Constitution itself regulates the relationship between these three arms of the state, but they must relate. The Attorney General speaks in the cabinet on behalf of the judiciary. He is the one who secure the resources that the judiciary would need to effectively carry out its judicial independent function. What the Attorney General cannot do in his deliberations with the Chief Justice and the judiciary and all of that is to tell them who should be the judge, what should be the outcome of a matter, and what the sentence should be. There is where you have interference. But in terms of collaboration, there must be.
Okay.
The Police Service Commission is appointed by Her Excellency after consultation with the Prime Minister and on behalf of those who didn't support the government, the leader of the opposition. And there are occasions when the Prime Minister meets with and shares the business of the state with Her Excellency, and there are occasions when the Prime Minister, the government, would interface with all the other institutions of state, including, of course, the judiciary, as I told you, including the Integrity Commission, the Police Service Commission. What I consider to be interference is where you tell them outside of the norm, consultations, discussions. For example, I told you earlier that the Prime Minister, acting as head of the National Security Council, wrote some concerns that we, the National Security Council, gathered to the Police Service Commission.
Okay.
For the Service Commission to do whatever it may or willed with it.
All right.
And therefore, there is some collaboration, but interference would mean telling the Independent Service Commission what to do, how to do it, who to appoint, when to appoint. No, that is not the case. That doesn't exist. So I hope that your viewers, on the basis of your very potent question, will understand the reality of our circumstance,
yes,
understand what is interference, and understand, as I now give the assurance, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, is a particularly experienced and principled and constitutionally abiding Prime Minister, and operating from an ethos of fairness and transparency and openness and honesty. So I can assure your viewers, when it comes to political interference in the context as it is often used. This government is not engaged in that. You saw me speak in the parliament on Friday. You just ran the clip. I speak in the parliament with circuits running in my head all the time. That prime minister told all of us at the beginning of our appointments 6 years ago, if you lied to the cabinet and if you lied to the parliament, that is a fireable offense. And he went on to say, unlike the previous prime minister,
No.
when a minister of government is fired by a prime minister who holds the authority to do that at any time, he must do so without any fear that the minister will be able to fire back. And I spoke in the parliament, understanding those important tenets and comparing them in my mind with what transpired when you were in the cabinet and you saw another prime minister and all the noise and fiasco with her ministers and how they would fire back at her and she had to keep quiet and all kinds of things. That doesn't happen in this time, this block.
Let's not go there because it's not really pertinent to what we're discussing. But I had to ask you that question because the question is uppermost in the minds of people. But I will take it as your answer. Summary position, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Police Service Commission acted in its independent capacity, and you are also saying that information from national security, from the National Security Council would have come to the Police Service Commission, which would have helped in its determination of how to proceed. Okay?
No, what I said is that as a simple bare fact, that the National Security Council considered that there was some concerns raised by the public through the media and otherwise, that it felt in fairness to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, it was obliged to share with the Service Commission. I also told you, I don't know what other information the Service Commission has.
Yes.
And I also reminded you that the Service Commission, in its own independent, deliberate decision, appointed an investigator to investigate certain things. God knows what information he has provided them since and what else he will provide. The bottom line is they are free to listen to the people of Trinidad and Tobago like any other institution and to, on proven or on sufficiently established facts, make its own deliberate determinations.
Minister, I want to ask you if you would indulge me in this matter. There are so many issues because this is such an important issue. Would you be willing to stay for about 15 minutes after the news so that we can continue this discussion?
Yes, I would be quite happy to do that.
Thank you, Minister. We'll talk right after the news. Welcome back to Brighter Morning with Bo on MCTV, Multicultural TV, and U97.5 FM, Hot Like Pepper, Multicultural Radio. Our guest this morning, and we thank him for staying on after the news, is the Honorable Minister of National Security, Mr. Fitzgerald Hinds. And before we start, Mr. Hinds, I just wanted to say that I understood, clarifying the position. Mr. Griffith's contract ended on August the 17th. He was subsequently appointed by the Public Service Commission to act. During the period that he was acting, he asked for leave for private business. That leave was granted until the 20th of September. Is that correct? And whatever controversies transpired because Mr. Griffith came back early and asked to be asked to continue in the position of acting commissioner. But the acting commissioner, as of now and continuing, is Mr. McDonald Jacobs. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I say that because
Yeah, I think so. Quite frankly, when I listened to the news a moment ago, your news, I thought that was not gotten as clearly as you have just explained it. And I'm very happy that you did. It is, as I said, simply that his contract expired on the 17th of August. He was asked to continue to act immediately following that, and sometime during that period of acting, he asked to leave the jurisdiction, and it was while he was out of the jurisdiction, Mr. Jacob was asked by the Police Service Commission to act as commissioner. So there's evidence from that alone that there's another, or there was at that time and remains, for different reasons of course, an acting commissioner of police, and you can't have two acting commissioners of police. So Mr. Griffith is not at the moment, acting commissioner of police. That's essentially what we said.
Okay, fine. I want to come back to this issue of the appointment of Mr. Griffith and the various controversies, but I mean, you are Minister of National Security, and the crime issue is emerging now, and I hope to use the little time that we have to deal with both issues, okay? You yourself raised it earlier. Recently we've had a gang leader murdered or executed, I don't know, but a gang leader murdered, and subsequent to that you've had a number of individual citizens being murdered, or if you want, executed in various parts of the country. I mean, some of them seemingly, you know, you might say innocently going about their business, a mother and daughter in their household, a coconut vendor, etc. What is happening to the crime situation is at the present time that the country needs to know and be aware of, and what, from your point of view as Minister of National Security, are the challenges that you have that you must contend with at this time, because it's important?
There are many and multifaceted. One of the challenges that we face, and it's a very high priority for the government, and possibly the highest priority for the Ministry of National Security, is the question of border security. We have loose borders, as we all know, as a little island state so close to the South American continent, so close to Venezuela, 20 minutes speedboat trip away, on a path or paths that have been used for decades, over a century actually, where illicit things, including guns and drugs, and now more prominently human trafficking, is growing on us to support the sex trade in Trinidad and Tobago and the perversions of so many human beings, some of whom live in Trinidad and Tobago. And that involves children, that involves using date, rape kinds of drugs to blunt the minds of these women and victims so that they won't even know what's happening to them. A whole lot of evil. But at the core of it is the porosity of our borders. And I have spent a lot of time in the last 5 months as Minister of National Security, and continue to spend time focusing on that, because we believe, if we could tighten up our borders, it means the inflow of human traffic victims, drugs and weapons would be minimized.
Okay,
and then we have the problem. I had a survey done by the SSA, the Strategic Services Agency, or intelligence gathering agency, very professional people in there, and they did a very scientific analysis of the state of illegal firearms in Trinidad and Tobago, and they are many, and you could see from the prevalence of them in the use of the murders that you just spoke about. We have a problem of illegal guns of all descriptions, automatic assault war weapons. and we have to take them away from the criminals. I then find that I have the question of productivity to deal with, because taking them away means that all the elements of national security and all elements of the state, because we take a whole of government approach to dealing with this, the question of education, the question of health, including mental health, the question of finance, the question of social delivery, social service delivery, all of the elements of the government has to come together to bear on these kinds of problems. But when it comes to interdiction and preventing crime, those are the issues that fall squarely to national security. We have the productivity issue. We have the issue of manpower, human resources, other resources, all of these things working, but they are necessary to come together. I told you earlier, the Forensic Science Center, a very important ingredient in the criminal justice chain, not as optimally efficient as I believe we could be. And in front of me now is the responsibility of providing them with the resources and the motivation so that they will function optimally, so that when a matter comes for analysis before them, which is a part of the evidence in a case, it wouldn't stay by us for 2 years and then the case is delayed and the witnesses get fed up and the police resign and the witness is killed. And that brings us into the realm of witness protection now and its efficacy. And you have a myriad of things happening all along, and these are the matters that are gaining my attention. You have the behavior of human beings, our citizens, the noise, the scandal, the quick to draw blood. So you have the failure of parents to train the children a little bit better and differently. Not all parents, but apparently some. Because some children I heard recently, and quite honestly, that as late as 1 a.m. in the morning in a particular community in this country that was reported to me about a week and a half ago by a sober, painful, a sober citizen, and he expressed it to me painfully. As late as 1 a.m. consistently, children in his neighborhood are on the streets, and I'm talking about 8, 9, 10 to 12 years. I asked, where are your parents? Where are their parents? And he casually told me the parents are outside drinking and liming and smoking too. And he told me children of that age are smoking marijuana and gambling in his neighborhood. This is what I heard, and verily believe it to be true. So these are the kinds of and then worse yet, and very troubling, he tells me that some of these children, the following day, will not be seen close to a phone or an iPad or a computer to get engaged in the distance learning that the Minister of Education and sound government policy and plenty millions of resources invested in staff, in technology, in all kinds of things. The children are not engaged in that in some cases. Of course, we know children who are. We just saw the SCA results. We just saw the common entrance results. And we saw the jubilation on behalf of some of them who did well and so on. But we do have elements of the society where these things are not impacting enough. Those are the matters that concern me in the Ministry of National Security.
No, I understand.
So the problems are multifaceted, as I say, but we understand them. The world is not getting better. This very technology that you and I are using to communicate with your millions of viewers all over the world for all time is used to perpetrate violence, obscenity, sexual perversion. The children of this world are exposed to that. Illegal firearms are a problem in Trinidad and Tobago, but there are gun manufacturers, big businesses with loud voices in congresses and parliaments all over the world in a gun lobby that are making these guns like biscuits on a daily basis. The difference is they don't have to, biscuits are dunked in tea and consumed, and disappear. But this metal and steel that consists of bullets and make the basic ingredients in a gun, that don't go away. When a gun is manufactured, it is going to be around for a very, very, very long time with lethal consequences. Who will speak to the manufacture of these weapons that end up in the hands of little unthinking young men all around the world, in South America, in the United States? An ex-minister of government just sent me a WhatsApp during the break. Some Russian university, a gunman went in and just killed
this morning. Yes,
8
last
people.
night. Yes.
So, according to Sir Ellis, before he left us, human beings are not getting any better. So those are issues for the men of the cloth, the pundits and the panditas and the imams and the pastors and the priests and the parents.
I have the Archbishop here tomorrow. I'm going to ask him about it. But, okay, Minister, so you are focused on border security. I mean, I imagine you're going to deploy the 12 or so ships that we have, maybe more than that now. You're going to work with the Coast Guard. We have social problems. I imagine you're going to work with some of the ministries, etc., to deal with that. We have crime in the country. You need the police to work at full throttle to be able to deal with that. And
the Defense Force.
And the Defense Force. And so
and the municipal police.
So I take it that you are going to develop strategies to do that, and those will be supported in the budget. But I want to ask you this. You talk about illegal guns and so on. Mr. Griffith, in his capacity as Commissioner of Police, freed up the licensed gun distribution system and gave large numbers of guns, it seems, to citizens who had been applied, and for whom there had been a bottleneck for some time. Is that seen as something negative by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, or what is the position of the Minister of National Security? Do you, for instance, is there a policy, for instance, on licensed guns being given out in Trinidad and Tobago? Has that been done transparently over time, including now? And is the policy to allow people to apply for guns, and once they are screened, to be allowed to protect themselves? Are we seeing something here that has been a part of the controversy?
Well, part of the mandate that the police service gave to Mr. John, Stanley John, retired Justice of Appeal, is to look at the firearms issue in Trinidad and Tobago, the licensing regime and the grant of firearms, because I think it is now well established that that whole regime departed from the one that we knew traditionally. There are two approaches to the grant of firearms: a restrictive approach and then a permissive approach. I have in my hand right now a policy document which was handed to me last week, which I am studying as we speak, issued by the Office of Law Enforcement Policy, OLEP. They were asked by me very early in my coming to national security as its minister to study the legal firearm regime and to make recommendations, because it was clear to me that there was this dichotomy of the restrictive and the permissive running in tandem with each other, so to speak. And I'm reading that policy document. It will be the first time they presented it to me last week, and I will now be, having studied it and satisfied myself, I'll be taking it to the cabinet for its consideration. And they are making recommendations, 3 different kinds of recommendations in respect of this matter. I don't want to prejudge it. But traditionally in Trinidad, we had the restrictive approach, where the question was not a right to carry a firearm merely because you qualified for it, but the bigger question is, did you really need one? What is the reason why you need it? We took a restrictive approach. In the United States, for an example, they have a more permissive approach, where in their constitution they have the right to bear arms, and once you could afford it, you walk in any store and you buy anything you want. And if you want 54 of them, you could have 54. And if one day you want to go mad and walk down the road and open up one on a crowd, then you do that. And then they regard it as an incident. But they have gotten to the point in the United States where some are saying that gun violence is a public health issue today. And there's a lot of toing and froing with the gun lobby in the United States. Sure. So we had an element. And I saw an element of that kind of permissive manifestation in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, Mr. Griffith made it very clear. Once a citizen qualifies on the screen, to use your word, he or she can have it. And some people in the society would have been accustomed to and take a more restrictive approach. So that is something that the policy has now analyzed. And when I'm at the bottom of it and I take it to cabinet, the cabinet will decide as a matter of government policy where we will continue to head in Trinidad and Tobago.
So that issue of the more restrictive approach prior to Mr. Griffith and the permissive approach more permissive approach under Mr. Griffith has been, in fact, a matter of controversy, has become a matter of controversy.
No, I wouldn't say a matter of controversy at all. It's a matter that caught my own attention as a former police officer who worked in the firearms section, actually, when I was in the police service in the administration branch. And I have some level of familiarity with it. As a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, as a member of parliament, as a member of the National Security Council, as Minister of National Security, having acted here many, many times in the past, I do understand the public sentiment. I'm a member of parliament, I'm a citizen, I'm a man. So I do understand the public element and I have my own feelings about it, but it's nothing controversial. It's a matter for a clear, intellectual, and scientific-based approach, and the country deciding the way forward on the basis of that. As we have to do in all things, apply the mind, use the intellect that is available, the people who are well-trained at public expense through gate and otherwise, apply intellect, come to positions, make decisions, taking all matters into account, and once the institution, the individual, the government decide on something, approach it in that way, and do it quietly and with dignity and soberly, without the scandal and the noise and the bacchanal that we have become famous for. No controversy at all.
So, Minister, what is likely to happen with legal firearms going forward? What is, what is there going to be a policy position, and with that a certain amount of transparency about the process and a certain amount of clarity about how this will be done? I mean,
that's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead. You can answer that. Remember, we have limited time now, Minister, and I want to ask you.
That's a great question, and that is precisely what the document that was handed to me by the director of OLEP on behalf of her organization. They were put to work in early July. They did it in the time frame anticipated. They did it particularly well. I am studying it now. It's the first time we'll have a written policy on this question. When it gets past my own intellectual taste and my own understanding, they haven't submitted it to me as minister. I will take it to the cabinet. If it pleases the cabinet, one of their 3 recommendations, the cabinet will assume, and then we'll proceed from there. It will become official government policy. Thank you.
But do you know one of the sentiments, you say that you are well in tune with the sentiments in the country. Do you know that one of the sentiments in the country is that the state is unable to protect the innocent citizen, and therefore there is an assertion of what you might call citizens' advocacy or rights for gun ownership as a way of self-protection in a situation in which the state cannot protect the citizen from gangs or criminals, etc. How do you respond to that? Because it's an important tension point over the issue of gun policy.
Well, I'm fully aware of that sentiment, and have been for many years, and it's a valid position to contemplate. But this is a matter that the society will discuss in more poignant terms going forward. I have my own personal view, but I'm not here to speak about my own personal view. I speak as a representative of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm prepared to take all the views into account. The policy that I have before me that I'm studying does take all of those matters into account from my observations of it. No doubt the cabinet would take all of these matters into account, and a position would be arrived at. But we have some options to consider bearing that important question as you've just raised it in mind.
We are running out of time, and I'm going to ask you two questions, and if you can give me quick answers, I'll be grateful. The government eventually will have to bring a name to the parliament for Commissioner of Police. Where will that name come from?
The Police Service Commission.
Okay, so the Police Service Commission has to do its work, and that matter will then be sent to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet.
The President.
The President first, and then from the President.
And then it comes to the Parliament.
Parliament, right. And, sorry, my error, you are correct. It goes from the Public Service to the President, and then it comes to the Parliament. You have any idea of how long that will take?
No, that is entirely a matter in the hands of the Police Service Commission. No political interference.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you the final question now, Minister. What is going to happen, I mean, given what we sense to be a troubling escalation or likely escalation of crime, criminality, criminal activity, what is going to happen over the next 2 months, and especially when we lift the state of emergency?
Well, I indicated to you, I have observed a growing and burgeoning crime situation within the last couple of weeks, and it's been going on for a while. And I think in my interface with the police and law enforcement generally, they understand that this is a burgeoning and a serious problem, and different strategies are being applied. I will continue to dispense government policy and to provide law enforcement with the resources and to provide them with the inspiration and to represent the public in my interface with them. And I anticipate that they will continue to step up to the plate. I see some very positive signs there. I mean, I would have met with the leadership of the law enforcement platform recently, and right behind that, I saw some activity that made me quite happy, quite proud, and I want to see more of it on a sustained basis. Every single operator in national security, from minister to permanent secretary to administrative staff to all the various units, the defense force, the police, the fire service, the prison service, the forensic science center, the probation service, the entire platform must come alive. Yeah. All of us are sworn and paid. Come alive in service and in protection to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That's the vision. And it is possible, and I'm pressing to see that achieved.
Now, I know I told you that was the last question. I want to ask you something. All these controversies that have emerged, and, you know, the matter of going back and forth between public service and the Mr. Griffith, yourself and Mr. Griffith, the matter going into court, a private citizen now bringing a matter before the court, questioning whether he should have been appointed at all by the Public Service Commission after his contract was over. Mr. Griffith himself fighting the Police Service Commission in the court. Don't you think that all of this kind of weakens our national security situation and our ability to gain control of crime and criminality and simply on national security situation in the country?
I think not. I think the men and women of the police service, the men and women of the defense force, the men and women of law enforcement generally are on their jobs. I think we have a leader of the police service in the personality of Acting Commissioner Jacob, and nothing that is happening as you have described it ought to influence, and I don't anticipate nothing will influence our obligation to get and continue to do our work in the protection and the service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Absolutely nothing. That's why I suggest that we bar the noise, bar the confusion, and remain laser beam focused on what is in front of us. You did tell me it would have been your last question previously, and then you popped another one. But the combination of politician come journalist is a very potent one. I won't be surprised if you gave me another 5.
Well, I would like to keep you for another 5, but I want to keep my promise to you. And I thank you. I thank you especially for staying after the news and having this extended conversation. I am out of the politics now, Minister. Totally out of the politics.
A man is the sum total of all of his past.
And I ask you these questions. I wouldn't make any claim to be a journalist, but I certainly am a very engaged citizen, and I'm trying to use this forum here that I've tried to create with the help of MCTV and U97.5 FM radio as a place of education, information, enlightened conversation for development. And you have played a role in that this morning. I want to thank you very, very much.
I would like to thank you as well. I consider the tenor of the program, the pace as a friend, a professional friend, WhatsApp me during the course of the break. I consider the pace to have been dignified and sensible, and I really enjoyed your company, and thank you very much. I wish you all the very best. All the best to you and yours.
And to you also, Minister.
Thank you very kindly.
That has been a conversation with the Minister of National Security, Honorable Fitzgerald Hinds, a Member of Parliament and National Security Minister. We had a long conversation that preceded the news and then went on for about 20 minutes after the news. And we thank you for staying with us, listening, watching. We hope you found that conversation valuable. Chanel assures me that she will carry some of it on the news so that the matter will be a matter of some currency and potency as we proceed. We move on now to Mr. Mr. Gregory Aboud. Sorry, I almost said Gary. Mr. Gregory Aboud, who is the president of Duma, but we'll take a break before we start our conversation with him. This is Brighter Morning with Bo on U97.5 FM radio, Hot Like Pepper radio, Multicultural radio, and MCTV, Multicultural TV.